Well, yesterday I talked about the Kensington runestone, and I hope I made a favorable impression. And as I said, Dick and I published our book, The Kensington Runestone, Compelling New Evidence, 3 years ago in November. And immediately after the book came out, what Dick decided to do was go in a little different direction, and I went in a different direction. He wanted to work with the academic scholars. And I'm just going to tell you guys what happened to Professor Henrik Williams after we were in Sweden in 2003. The first time we brought the stone there, he was called into the office of the dean of the college in Uppsala University. And you have to understand, this is the top runologist in the world today. He holds the #1 position. And the dean said, Mr. Williams, if you have enough time to work in the Kensington runestone, you have time for more work. So he gave him additional administrative duties, and that was a 3-year sentence. And if you know Henrik like I do, that's the last thing in the world that he would want to do. And it was punishment for even, daring to do this. So he's finally done with that. And now he and Dick are working together. They're about ready to publish a paper on the runestone, and I think it's going to go well. But this is what we're up against. And you guys probably have your own stories, but this is my story. And I got to tell you, I think it's the biggest bunch of crap I've ever seen in my life. But I run my own business. I'm not beholden to anybody. I can do what I want. But to see people punished and criticized and ridiculed, I don't even know what to say. It's crazy. So anyway, the Kensington runestone was great. And so now Dick has said, look, I know you're going to work on these other things, and you're going to talk about Templars, and I'm going to talk about Knights Templar today. Because from my perspective, they're the only people that I think are the only plausible people that could be involved with these stones, and I'll explain why in a second. But for him to be able to work with Henrik, he could not associate himself with that. Right or wrong, it was the right decision. So I had to go it alone, but I certainly haven't gone it alone. There are a lot of people in this room, Dave Brody. I can't tell you how many people have assisted, and it's been wonderful because, like raising a child, you know that old saying, it takes a village? Well, it's the same thing with this research, and believe me, there are a lot of people that have contributed and continue to contribute, and I welcome any and all input. So, what is it about the runestone that got me curious? Well, what it was this mysterious symbol that you saw, the hooked X. And so the logical place I thought to go was to where there were some other stones found in North America. Minnesota is where I started my journey, and the next stop was to a place called Pompum Beach, which is on the coast of Maine, and about a mile inland to a little place called Spirit Pond. And it was here in 1971 that 3 runestones were found, and this is a picture of the discovery site area, and I'm standing on a man-made dam here that's holding back the water, and it drops a couple, 3-4 feet when the tide is out, and when the tide is up, this area is saline. And right here is where a man who was looking for arrowheads and other artifacts sat down to smoke a cigarette, and he looked down on the ground and he saw a rock sticking out, and it had what looked like characters on it, and he dug them out and he found these 3 stones. Now, I talked yesterday about the stone holes, the triangular stone holes. I was a little bit hurried there at the end. It was my own fault. But I will tell you that I've looked at a lot of artifacts over the last 3 years and sites on the East Coast. And I don't know why, but it seems like at every one of these sites, just about every one of these sites, these holes turn up. And just like at many of these sites, and certainly at the runestone spot, there's a hole right there on the bedrock. This is a bedrock little projection into the water, and it's highly weathered. This is a coarse-grained granitic outcrop right here, and it exhibits very advanced weathering. It does have a triangular shape, just like the other holes, which indicates it was likely made with a straight chisel. Now, is it related to the runestones? I don't know. But, you know, that old association where there's smoke, there's fire, and I have to do this. It reminds me of an analogy my grandfather gave me. He was a Canadian, by the way. My mother was born and raised here. And he said, you know what, Scotty? If there's empty beer cans laying around, there's some drinking going on. I love that line. I'm sorry, but Walter Elliott was the one that found these stones, and there's a number of people, Sue Carlson, Roz Strong, and other people associated with NERA that knew Walter very well. He was a member of NERA, and I have to tell you that I don't think anybody has seriously said that he was responsible for carving these stones, and there's no way that he was. But anyway, these are the stones. There was also an amulet that was found that has an interesting cross on it. It also has some runes on the back side, but I'm going to focus on the three main stones. This is what we call the Spirit Pond inscription stone. It has the hooked X being used for the A sound, and clearly this is the connection that ties it to the Kensington runestone, in my opinion. But there's other information, and I'll go through the translation in a second here. This is the back side of the stone. There are 16 lines total, very long inscription. There are pentatic numbers, just like the Kensington runestone. And I've studied these stones. I actually was given permission to take a small sample. We did some X-ray diffraction work and some elemental mapping. And I can tell you that this is a laminated mudstone comprised of quartz, feldspar, and clay minerals, mostly illite and kaolinite, and halite. Well, being that far from the salt water, there's no surprise there. But the problem with this mineralogy is that basically it's made up of rock that other rocks break down into. So it really doesn't have anywhere to go as far as weathering. And unfortunately, I really can't do much with this. And I hate to say that, but that's the way it is. Here's some of the analysis data here. And because of the high clay content, it's going to be tough to study these. The other thing that's interesting, and I did a very detailed photo study just like I did on the runestone, you see those little holes at the bottom of those word separators? And for those of you that don't know, on these runestones, after they were done making a word or carving a word, they put a 2-dot word separator aligned vertically, and this meant basically we're done with this word, we're starting another one. But you can see these little pinholes at the bottom that are smaller in diameter. Walter said he cleaned out the inscription with a pocket knife. Does that sound familiar? Olaf did the same thing. So anyway, you can decide for yourself, but this tells us that we had an original inscription. Unfortunately, he did a better job than Olaf did, and there really isn't a heck of a lot for me to look at as far as original surfaces. As far as the translation goes, it appears to be a ship's log that, or a report that includes several names either of ships or people's names or perhaps both, we don't know. There are 3 pedantic numbers. The number 11 appears twice, the number 12, and the number 17 appears twice. And there are 3 Arabic 10s. All these numbers are used on the Kensington runestone. Unfortunately, because there are not enough word separators, and the reason they probably did this is because many of the phrases were probably common phrases. Whoever the author was of this inscription, probably another Cistercian monk, didn't put in enough word separators really to make definitive translation possible. So I'm not even going to try, and unfortunately many people think they have it translated. I don't believe they're ever going to be able to have it figured out all the way, simply because we just don't know where to separate the runes into words. And there are 3 Easter table dates on this stone. Now, the first analysis that was done by Professor Einar Haugen. I think he was from Harvard University. And one of the first things he said was that the date on this stone, if you look, you can see the word H-A-R is air, year. And then you see these 2 Arabic 10s. And he said that's the year 1010. Well, if it's 1010, he said, there's many words that are very clearly on here, and some of the language can be interpreted. But he said, this is not consistent with this time period. This is much later. And he said, therefore, it must be a hoax. Well, what Einar Haugen did not understand, and nobody's really understood very well, is the use of the Easter table dating method, which we talked about yesterday. Now, when Dick Nielsen looked at this, he said, no, this is year 10th column, 10th row. And then we see what looks to be, in his mind, and I agree with him, 3 U runes immediately afterward. I can tell you there isn't any word in Old or Modern Swedish that's spelled U-U-U. I know it looks like an M, but it's a ligature rune where they're tied together. It's called a bin rune. Well, a triple confirmation code would be consistent with the Cistercians, a Cistercian author, and certainly a Templar author. It's confirmed 3 times. When we go to the Easter table, if we go to the 10th column and down to the 10th row,